States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Once every 2 years, I get this opportunity to begin this meeting of electing, for the purpose of electing our Board of Ed chairperson and our Board of Ed secretary. I will assume the responsibilities of the Board of Ed chair, and once the chair is appointed, the new chair will take over for the election of the board secretary, and those are the only two positions by your bylaw that you elect. Other board members other boards of ed may have other positions, but you only have two. So, having said that, I would like to begin by entertaining nomination for board secretary. I'm sorry, for board chairperson.
I nominate Sharon Peters to be the board chairperson, continuing that role.
Okay.
Second.
Any other nominations? Hearing none, I close the nomination process. I'm going to give you a ballot and request that you fill out this ballot as required by state statute. It must be recorded who you voted for. Chris Darby, Lauren Christensen, Paul Stanhauser, David Murphy, Meg Skeda, and Sharon Peters. Six, nothing, your chair. You want to come sit in your chair, in your seat? Yes.
Well, it's from well lasted. Right, I noticed I didn't.
Would you pass those on to Margaret? Thank you. Hello, Madam Chair. Give this to Meg Skeda.
Okay. Next on the agenda, are you doing this still or do I?
No, you do the secretary now.
All right. Are there any nominations for the Board of Ed Secretary?
I'd like to nominate Meg Skeda for Board of Ed Secretary.
Okay, is there a second? Second. Okay, any other nominations? Hearing none, we'll close nominations. And we need to vote in writing. Mr. Darby. Dave. I'm sorry about this. Meg, Lauren.
Well, no drama tonight. All unanimous votes. We can proceed. Thank you very much. Oh, send those to Meg as well.
Yep, that's great. Okay. Okay, next on the agenda is the waiver of our Board of Ed bylaw 9221 regarding replacement of Board of Education members. that bylaw requires that there be, that a vacancy be filled by a vote of the remaining members of the board until the next regular session. And usually the vacancy is announced at one meeting, and then the vote would take place at the next regularly scheduled meeting. And we're looking to waive that bylaw so that we could vote today for a replacement for Eric Pearson, who had to resign. So is there a motion to waive the bylaw?
I'll make a motion to waive bylaw 9221.
Is there a second?
I second.
Second. Any further discussion?
For tonight only?
For tonight only.
Okay.
Okay, all in favor? Aye. Unanimous? All right. And next we have replacement of Board of Ed member. Is there,
I make the motion.
Well, there's a recommendation from the Republican Town Committee for our former member to be reinstated.
and that would be Mr. Lavoy. Okay, is there a motion for, to have Mr. Lavoy replace Eric Peterson on the Board of Ed?
Yep, I make a motion to replace, Eric Peterson, Tim Lavoy, this evening,
I think it would be technically to accept the
to
recommendation.
accept the recommendation.
Is that right? Do you think so?
Yeah.
Is that what it
Accept
is?
the
Okay.
recommendation of the
Accept the
Republican
recommendation
Town
of the
Committee.
of the Republican Town Committee.
I'll second that.
Okay, any further discussion? All in favor? Welcome back.
You just can't vote, but you can approach.
Ryan seconded it.
Pardon me?
Ryan.
Ryan was unable to attend, so, but it's important that he sits with us.
Yep.
Back in his old seat even.
Oh, he has it already.
I took care of it.
Oh, you did? Oh, good.
Yeah.
I would
Alright.
just add that we're very, sorry to see Eric go, that we wish him well and his family, and put that
Yes,
in the
for
minutes.
sure.
For
Yes.
sure. He
We appreciated his
Served
input
well.
and his service on the board. And we welcome you back, Tim.
welcome back.
Okay.
Do we, wait a minute, where's the cake?
I still had a piece of that cake sitting.
Come on.
2 weeks later.
Oh, no.
Okay, next is the approval of the agenda. Because this is a special meeting, there can't be any alterations to the agenda. So I ask for the motion to approve it.
I make a motion to approve the agenda as presented tonight.
Okay, and a second,
Second.
Chris Darby. All in favor? Unanimous? Okay, the consent agenda. We have approval of minutes from November 12th, Board of Ed regular meeting, and a donation from Life Touch. Is there a motion to approve the consent agenda?
I'll move we approve the consent agenda.
Second?
Okay, all in favor?
Can I,
Oh, sure.
am I allowed to make a comment? I think there was an error, a little error on the minutes. I'm not sure. Yeah, I do not believe Justin Rank was present at the November 12th meeting. Is that true?
I may have came in late.
I think he came in late.
Oh, I misremembered. Thanks. Sorry about that. In that case, I'm good. I didn't see any other typos. I didn't mean to. No.
Thought it should be noted what time he did come in.
Right.
So Meg, if we could remind,
I don't remember, but I don't think it was very late. I'd say, yeah. So that's about right.
I think I only remembered Olivia giving the report, and that's
yeah.
Any other comments on the consent agenda?
I'm assuming I'll have to abstain, correct?
Okay. All in favor? Okay, we have 1, 2, 3, 5 in favor, 1 abstention, and Tim can't vote. All right, so that's done. Audience of citizens, is there anyone who'd like to address the board? Where'd everybody go? Okay. Student representative report.
Now that I'm here, I'm gonna take you back to the fall. So it's been a while since our last report. I'd like to start with shortly before we left for Thanksgiving break, our school held a turkey and food drive to help the Portland Food Bank. That went over tremendously well. I believe I remember hearing somewhere that it was one of our best years for donations. So much so that the food bank didn't actually know what to do with all the turkeys they received.
Wow.
So that's a good activity for us to, get involved with the community and also earn some spirit points for our class. So after the turkey and food drive, the Tri-M and NHS Honor Societies held their, this year they held their application process and the inductions, or Tri-M held its induction back in November. That's the Honors Music Society. Like I said, that puts value in music and scholarship, and a handful of members were recognized then. NHS has its induction this week. That's the National Honor Society. And yes, that's upcoming. The senior class trip was also back in November. They went to New York City, and though I was not in attendance, it certainly made me jealous. I heard it was a lot of fun. They enjoyed a show at Radio City Music Hall, toured the city, and came back with a lot of stories to tell. Shortly after that, Fall Sports Awards were held in the high school auditorium. We recognized athletes from cross country, boys and girls soccer, swimming, and our Cromwell Portland football team. A lot of good awards and a good way to look back on the seasons, especially a good way to lead into winter sports, which have just started recently, to those indoor track and basketball. I've had practices going on. Indoor track's first meet, I believe, is tomorrow, and basketball may have a game going on right now, unless I'm mistaken. Our school snowball, our annual snowball, was held this last Saturday. I was in attendance. It was a lot of fun. I might be biased, but I think it's the best one yet. But certainly everyone has a lot of fun. That's something the Student Senate works very hard to pull off, and I think they did a great job this year. Let's see. To also continue our winter cheer, the DECA Club is holding a poinsettia sale that's ongoing. So that's our business club in school, and it's a good way to, work on the business model and get those festive flowers out into the community. Also, our greenhouse club is selling wreaths and kissing balls to stick with the holiday theme. And I don't know if they grow those in the greenhouse, but it certainly goes with their club there. And finally, starting this Friday and going into next week is our school Winter Spirit Week, and culminating in our Winter Pep Rally. That's always a lot of fun. It's my favorite one to dress up for, and we're looking forward to a good way to kind of close out the year before we return in January.
So how do you dress up?
My favorite day is always red and black on that Friday. I usually paint my face in the colors, go dye my hair, and wear my red and black shoes.
Sounds like fun. Great.
I have a quick question. Where is the indoor track meets? Where do they
I
go?
don't know,
Oh, okay.
but I can find out for you.
All right.
Track.
Indoor track.
They generally go to the Floyd Little Center in New Haven.
Oh, they go all around New Haven. Okay.
Yeah, I think that's the only place I've ever my
Okay.
son does the indoor
Yeah,
track.
I
don't
just
think
said-
they go in any, they
yeah.
practice here in the hallways.
Do they really? Okay.
Yes, you gotta be careful.
Okay,
yeah.
that's
You
good.
get run
to know.
down.
I
Yeah.
run,
Yeah.
yeah, practically, yeah, okay.
But,
All right.
because,
All right, well, that's good to
it's
know.
it's a nice facility.
I bet it is,
Oh,
thank
yeah.
you. I couldn't think of anything indoor here except for Wesleyan, so I didn't know if they were over there.
Yeah,
All right,
they used to
cool.
do a lot of indoor stuff in Wesleyan, but it has a new management now.
Is that what it is?
They're not as welcoming to high school
Okay. Oh,
teens as they used to be.
all right, thank you, Jeff. Thank you, Tim, thank you.
Thank you. Okay, communications and updates. Mr. Superintendent.
So I'm going to begin with all those notices that I have received. Usually we have that separate on the agenda, isn't it?
The retirement?
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
So I'm going to do it during my communication and updates, all right?
Okay.
So, we have a resignation from grade 6 teacher Ismail Zagari from Brownstone School, effective immediately. We have a letter from Eric Peterson resigning from the Board of Ed, as previously mentioned. We have a letter of retirement from Rob Dutko, grade 5 math teacher at Brownstone School, who is retiring, as I said. John Cody is retiring as a grade 1 teacher from Valley View School. Mrs. O'Brien is retiring as a special education paraprofessional at, I think she's currently at Gildersleeve School, she is. And Ms. Sikorsky is resigning from her position as she's new to the district, but she has accepted she's a certified teacher and has accepted a position that requires a certification. So she is moving on. We feel badly about that, but we certainly understand. And then Felicia D'Angelo has notified you that she is intending to take maternity leave in springtime. All right. And then we have Megan Pastraba, who was honored at the Middletown Rotary Club last month. And so we always like to take this opportunity to congratulate Megan for being the Student of the Month. And Mary Dickinson has resigned her position on the Gildersleeve Wheeler Foundation. This is a huge loss for us.
Yeah.
She has done a significant bookkeeping work. She represents that team at regular meetings, but there's a lot of behind-the-scenes work that she does as bookkeeper to make it all work. It's quite a substantial fund now. Every year it has grown, and so she's managed that portfolio, and she's done it really well. And so we will miss Mary Dickerson. One last retirement, Joanne Marola had announced her retirement as chemistry teacher here in Portland. All right. All right, you have received your monthly enrollment statement, correct? Were there any questions from you about our enrollment?
It was uploaded this morning, so I gave you guys a note.
Well, I don't think there's anything of great significance. There's a change of a net gain of 2 students. All right? We've been notified by the College Board that Portland is one of 250 districts named as the AP honor roll. That's quite a distinguishing characteristic for a school. With only 250 of us, and that is that we have simultaneously achieved our increased number of students who are taking advanced placement courses, and then a increase in the rate that students are passing with a 3 or better. So it's great. There's only a handful of us in Connecticut, and only 250 in the country. So that's great. Popular topic: drug sniffing dogs. We're here at Portland High School today, as they have been. I'm just notifying you, as I typically do each year annually, and it proved to be very successful in that we didn't find anything. All right. Budget process review. I wanted to make sure that you understood where we are. I had it here. And where we're heading. So we have a significant task ahead of us during the month of January. Just record this date. By Friday, January 24th, we must have the budget, the approved Board of Education budget, to the first selectman. All right? By Friday, January 24th. I think our calendar allows us to do this, but if it requires additional meetings, obviously we would schedule them. Every year, the first selectwoman's office puts out a schedule. This is only a draft, so I didn't copy it, but it pretty much follows the schedule that we have had in previous years. we tend to, we sometimes lose our momentum after we've done our part. And I think if nothing else, last year proved that we must continue our momentum and until it's an approved budget in May. And so probably we should be talking through the process this winter and spring of how we continue that momentum of engaging people in the process for the budget approval. You know, our piece happens, then it goes to the first select woman, and then there's some hearings, and then some workshops, and then it goes for a town meeting, and then it goes for the referendum. So we gotta keep moving and be part of this whole process. So I just wanted to alert you at that.
Question,
Yes.
when do we usually get, I can't remember, your preliminary budget binder?
We're aiming to get to you prior to Christmas to the holiday, which gives you quite a bit of time, because our first board meeting is until January 7th. It's not a promise yet, but we're moving in that direction. She is just incredible. Of course, it's not all good news.
And I do have a question.
Yeah.
In terms of the community, or you're saying to keep the momentum going, are you suggesting that Board of Ed members invite PTO people or go to PTO meetings to have those conversations with parents and other stakeholders in
I'm
our budget?
suggesting that there'd be outreach to our greater community before, 2 weeks before the referendum.
Okay.
That we maintain some momentum throughout the winter and spring to get people engaged so they know and understand what we're putting forth. And that begins in January, right?
Right.
We gotta get people sitting in those chairs so they understand.
Yeah.
Now,
Agreed.
I know you all want this to be transparent, but I'd like our public to better understand what it represents.
Mhm.
There are significant additions to the budget coming. And so there will be lots of discussions at this level, and the public needs to be part of that process.
Yep.
My
good.
gut sense is, with what happened last year, they'll have more participation this year.
I hope so. I hope so.
I
Do
agree.
you post your proposed budget anywhere so that it would be available for
Yes.
the public to look
Yep,
at it
yep.
while we're discussing it in
Yeah,
January?
yeah, it's a public document, so yes. Yep.
All right,
I certainly bring extra copies. Now, not the whole booklet,
right.
but the 6-page version. But if people want a more detailed version, have at it.
And the public
And-
library always had copies. for-
Is it on the website, though? You put it up on the website?
Margaret, do we?
The approved budget we usually do, I don't know if we've ever
Not
put the
the proposed.
proposed.
We can do that.
I know you said the schedule's tentative, but do you have the tentative date where our budget workshop would be happening with the Board of Selectmen?
Sure, I do. Tentative
That's in
dates,
here.
I think there are 2 of them, but
Okay.
March 24th.
Those.
Tuesday, March 24th at 7 PM in the Mary Flood Room. And then, of course, I said 2, because the most important one is the budget deliberations that happens the week later, because that's where the action happens, on Tuesday, March 31st, and then Wednesday, April 1st. And sometimes they don't do both of them, but, all
When's
right.
capital?
Thank you.
Is there,
When is capital?
yeah.
Let's see,
Usually toward the end, I think.
it's not listed here now, so,
Okay.
again, this is tentative, so
Yep.
perhaps it just happened. There's a document that came to Stephanie, and she forwarded it to me, relative to our per pupil costs, that, I thought you would wanna see it. I'm gonna pass it out. And it's too much data for us to discuss today, but I wanna discuss it as part of our budget process, and it's natural to do that. So I hemmed and hawed whether I'd give it to you tonight, but I really thought that at least it begins your better understanding of where we've come from. So this is a comprehensive set of documents from the Connecticut State Department of Education, and it has to do with our per pupil costs, which you've heard me talk about multiple times. Well, now what the State Department of Education is doing is breaking down the per pupil costs by building, and by object, by budget object,
so that you could see it in a lot, you can see each of our schools and their allocations. And I was thinking of you, Dave, that you would love these numbers, that you are just gonna love it. Because it's 7 pages of numbers, and broken down into really good information. Now, the one caveat is, what the state gives us is 2017, 2018. They're always a year behind. So I'm gonna pass this out, and we'll ask you to bring it to the next meeting, and it will be on the agenda. I'm sure we'll put it on your site, your web, your Dropbox account. There's 3. And if you have any questions, ask them, because I can call the State Department of Education if I can't answer those questions, so that we come prepared. But I thought it was information that you would like. Let me just make sure I'm set here. No, I'm not. Did you take a look at the ESS data?
Yep.
Yes.
There are 2 pieces that I would draw your attention to. One, the fact that we've had now substitute nurse. As per our recommendation from our lead nurse, I think it was a good idea. We all thought, given the fact that we struggle with getting nurses, let's see if we can get them engaged and involved in the process. So there's a memorandum that we created.
It says nurse, are we talking about LPNs or RNs?
No, we're talking about RNs.
RN, all in
That's
one,
what the
okay.
board wants.
Okay, all right, I wasn't sure.
Yep. All right,
Can I
then,
ask a quick question about the ESS bill rates?
yeah,
Do
Yeah,
you,
but-
the improvement in fill rates from this fall over last fall, do you feel like that's due to our increased wage that we're offering? Or do you think that they're just doing a better job? Or are there more subs available?
I think there's a lot of things. I think it has to do with our increase rates. So we've gone from $80 to $90, and
Yep.
that's a significant 1-year jump. You know, it's still a low amount of money, but it also has to do with their greater recruiting efforts. And, you know, we meet, in fact, I have a meeting with them tomorrow. So the pressure's on for them to continue to get people in these positions.
Great.
And not just warm bodies in these positions, but people that can really do the job. Being a sub isn't easy, but
Yeah.
we want somebody who can do the job. So I think it's due to both things
Okay,
Do you
thanks.
see any,
and some increased pressure.
do you see any correlation in, like, is it usually like the high school's the hardest to fill? Had the most unfilled?
This data is all generated by humans, by people, by our teachers and paraprofessionals, and it can change dramatically based on significant events at a particular school. Just, you know, we've had large amounts last year of people from Portland High School who went out on extended leave. So those extended leave really raised the rates.
Yep.
Do you have a commentary about where we stand compared to last year?
We're definitely a lot better off than last year. I just think there's not as many people out long-term, you know, knock on wood. But, you know, just comparing to last year, we're probably about 20% under, with,
Budget-wise.
but yeah, budget-wise. So unless anything drastically changes, fingers crossed, that will be, and now remember, when I did the budget last year, it was based off of, you know, this is 18 months ago, so kind of left the budget where it was, not realizing we were gonna go over $108,000 last year. So hopefully this will get it back on track, where we'll come in under budget, or at budget at least.
And personnel committee, subcommittee members, former personnel subcommittee members, you know that you've made some significant changes in certain days. And so I'm monitoring that as well. I'll have that data later for you. But the early data appears that there's no significant change in usage.
Good.
But it's only early, and I didn't want to share it with you right now because I don't think it was that meaningful after 2 months.
Good.
All right.
Thank you.
Any other questions about that? The next piece is a quick one, I think, the supplemental appropriation. Last Wednesday, the Board of Selectmen had on their agenda the transfer of Oak Hill funds to the Board of Education. There was discussion and approval, and then decision to move it to town hearing. Am I correct in that? And so the town hearing is scheduled for Wednesday, December 18th at 7:15. And it's just a hearing. There's not a vote. It's just a hearing.
Well, they have, my takeaway was they hadn't decided if it was going to be a town vote or a Board of Selectmen vote.
Okay. I didn't hear that part.
Okay, maybe they've decided that since then.
Okay. I don't want to misspeak.
Yeah, I
So,
didn't.
I'm just, the note is legal notice of public hearing, and it has to do with the agreement for $80,000 in rental property fees for fiscal year 2020. And so while we can't approve that tonight, because they haven't made that, their own movement of money, I just wanted to notify you that is in the process.
So they've scheduled the hearing, they have not scheduled a vote, whether it's the Board of Selectmen or a public vote, that's not on the books yet?
Right.
Okay.
So that's the same night as the Board of Selectmen meeting, so I would assume that the vote would follow. But that's only an assumption.
I would assume the same thing. It's usually what typically happens.
If it's a Board of Selectmen vote, you're saying?
Correct, because again, I don't know how that's worded, whatever, but if it's a one where there has to be a town meeting versus a town
Right.
public hearing.
It's a public
Public
hearing.
hearing.
It has to do with the percentage of money that they are
I thought we were over that threshold, but maybe not.
supplemental. But you have to understand that we're only a part of the appropriations, and if they have to do a later appropriation, or they have to do a simultaneous appropriation, it could raise that
Change it.
and then require a town vote. But
Okay,
I don't know that, the first select woman has not said that, or Tom hasn't said to me that it required a town vote yet.
okay, great.
I think it just requires the public hearing, and then they're gonna vote on it.
That's what I thought, but I know there was some
Charter.
discussion
Yeah.
of both options. All right.
Be good if most of us could get there for that.
Mhm.
And the discussion with Tom and the Board of Selectmen is that this would be an addition to our maintenance line, given the fact that that is a significant need for, and we'll talk more about that when Carl steps up, but we have significant needs that must be addressed within the next few months. So that's my recommendation. I know that it's Tom Robbins's as well. And then, let's see,
So,
I think that's
just,
it.
For clarification, once, the Board of Selectmen, I assume it gets approved at their December 18th meeting, do we vote on the supplemental appropriation in January?
I think it
Or
would be,
does it just come into our, it just gets moved into our
I
whatever?
think it gets moved in, but, if you want to go ahead and accept the supplemental appropriation and designate it for, I don't think they're designating it.
Right.
You can designate where you want it to go. And my recommendation at this point would be for it to go into our maintenance account. All right?
Okay.
Okay. Good question. All right, I think that's it.
Dr. Britton? Director of Curriculum Instruction and Technology.
Hope you guys all had a nice Thanksgiving. So there's three things to update you on. Last time when I spoke with you, I talked about the goal that we have this year and the concern we have this year surrounding cybersecurity. Matter of fact, I was driving in today and I understand that the entire city of Pensacola, Florida is now in the midst of a cybersecurity attack, right? And this is a real threat. This is something that is concerning in a very significant way. So what we've done this year is we've contracted with a cybersecurity firm. It's called Atlas, and they're in the midst of doing a threat assessment. So we had a lengthy interview, the tech team and I, with consultants from the cybersecurity firm Atlas, and they asked us all kinds of questions about how we configure our networks, who has access, where we are in the cloud, how we back up our data, all kinds of very interesting questions. And from that, I can already see how their report is going to pan out. And they also sent us a device that we hooked into our network that's now running this analysis. So we expect that we're going to get a report from this group, maybe even by the end of this week. Now, interestingly enough, the report's actually going to go to the attorneys for the town. And the reason for that is that it needs to be marked attorney-client privilege, because that's going to reveal all of our vulnerabilities, and the last thing we want is that report subject to a freedom of information request where somebody could gain access to how to hack into our systems, right? Once we get that report, I'm not sure whether it would be executive session or somehow, but I would love to share it with you, right? So that we get a good handle on what our potential vulnerabilities are. Now, what I plan to do is once we get that report, I want to study it and meet with or speak with the consultants who wrote it and ask them what we need to do to harden our infrastructure and do everything we can to prevent, to the maximum extent possible, malware, ransomware, or other acts of cyber vandalism that we might experience. From that, I anticipate that there are going to be some recommendations for some policy, some incident response plans, and then some hardware and software and firewalls that we should be looking at that would enhance our digital security and our cybersecurity practices. Well, my recommendation is going to be that I take that report and then turn it into a nice Gildersleeve grant that we could use to propose hardening our infrastructure, updating our firewalls, updating our software, updating our servers, so that it is less likely or less susceptible to these attacks. Now, that's what I anticipate I'll be doing. I haven't received the report yet, but after some preliminary conversations, that's where I think we're heading. So I'm hoping that by January, I can come to you both with the report and a Gildersleeve Wheeler grant that would start to put us in a position where we have a safer network for all of us to work off of. So I did want to bring you up to speed on that, and it's happening quickly. I look forward to talking to you in January and giving you an update on where we stand with that. Questions there? No? Okay.
I'm sorry, you think you'll have a report by January?
I do. I think we might even have it by the end of this week. So the second thing I want to talk to you is something that Dawn and I have been working on, and Dawn, certainly speak up. I really give Dawn a lot of credit for what I'm about to talk about. I really see this as a function of her vision and leadership. But without question, I think as I look at Portland, we have outstanding curriculum, we have outstanding instruction, we have outstanding assessment, we are reflecting research-based best practices across the board. The X factor in all of this consistently is our students' social and emotional well-being, right? And the extent to which our students' social and emotional well-being translates into behavior and students' availability to be educated. Now, social emotional guaranteed experience in our students shows up in our health classes, in our responsive classroom, in our positive behavior interventions and support, in the work of our developmental counseling program. We have a terrific program of support and resources for all of our students. And the good news is I would say, conservatively, 90% of our students take advantage of those and are well regulated and available to be educated in their classes. Of course, we do have a group of students who struggle, right? So one of the things that Dawn has been bringing to the district is the work of a board certified behavior analyst, a BCBA. And we contracted with an individual named Carolyn Redpath. She's from CREC. And she's been working with both our administrators and our mental health team, our school social workers, psychologists, counselors. And what we're trying to build in the district is the capacity for our mental health support team to go in and conduct what are called functional behavior assessments. We're calling them soft FBAs on our students so that we can start to gather data on when it is they become dysregulated, the environments in which they become dysregulated, and then identify strategies that we could use with students to help make their social emotional skills more productive and effective. And then how we continue to collect data and monitor those improvements and that progression. So that training has happened intensively now 4 or 5 times. 4 times she's been
This year, she's been out 3 times.
Gone 3 times, and we have one more session planned with her. I've attended all of them, and I'm excited about this. I think this is a real opportunity for us to help students before it gets too late, before it reaches a point of no return. So, certainly, Dawn, did you want to add anything to that?
I think you summed it up fine.
Yeah, so I just wanted to let you know that that's happening. Our mental health team and our administrators have been attending those. There's some anxiety and nervousness about it. It's new learning for a lot of people, but certainly I think we're heading in the right direction. And I think this is going to be a great support for a lot of our students as we build this capacity.
Charles, I just want to add the point that I spoke with you about this afternoon, and that's the real boots on the ground report to you, because what he's describing is absolutely occurring. But what I want the board to better understand also is the increased number of students' actions that are disruptive at times. And we're experiencing that in every one of our schools. Ironically enough, other than the Portland High School. Portland High School seems to be really on a very nice trajectory right now. Last year we started in a very difficult place. But certainly I'm seeing it as, with my engagement, I know that Dawn is as well as the Director of Student Services, with lots of students who are not behaving. And so I want to we'll talk a little bit about that, more about that when we get to the community health based data, because that says a lot to you, I hope, as a Board of Education. But I bring that forth. I'm so thankful for the two of them to see the need and to get us educated so that we can address the need here in this district. And so I'm very appreciative of that. But also, when we look at the budget, that will be another thing that I want to talk more specifically about. So with the data and budget, this is a topic that I think we'll continue to talk about this spring.
Sure.
Thanks.
And the last thing I just wanted to mention is there's actually one statutorily required committee in the district. That is our Professional Development and Evaluation Committee, the PDEC committee. Last year, the PDEC committee, I think, did some outstanding work taking a look at the teacher evaluation instrument and making some nice enhancements to it that we're using this year. And I think that the work we did last year is really being implemented with a level of fidelity that's supporting a lot of our teachers this year. So that committee is still meeting. This year's task the committee has is to take a look at the administrator evaluation plan. So the administrator evaluation plan was last updated in 2015. Believe it or not, that was a long time ago, right? And a lot has changed since then. So that committee is taking a look at some new changes to the state models and how we can enhance that. The committee's met twice so far this year. We were supposed to meet on the snow day, but it was canceled. We have a subgroup of us taking a look at the administrator evaluation plan, and we're going to bring that forward to PDEC. And I think that PDEC is going to make some recommendations this year that we modify and enhance the administrator evaluation plan in preparation for a new superintendent, so that he or she, when she arrives, can have a great instrument to work with us using. So that's where we are.
Thank you.
Any
Thank
questions?
you. Okay, new business. Fiscal year 2019, fourth quarter transfers.
You're up, Stephanie.
So it's the typical, our fourth quarter transfers that make for the new members. We have to close out the year where every program has to be 0 or higher. We can't have any negative amounts. We do it in preparation of the audit that's going on right now. So I take a look at the different, I do it by major objects to make those accounts whole again. It's been a policy of the district to do this. I believe it needs a vote.
It does need a vote, so you want to guide us through these transfers.
So I looked at the areas where it was close this year because our end balance was so close to 0 that there wasn't a lot of changes that, they were very minimal. So that's why they're little accounts and little dollar amounts. Usually in the past, there's been higher that I felt that I've seen. So it was very easy for me to do this year. So really, it's just, because it only has to be by object, so I basically am just increasing the salary line.
On the first page.
Yeah, so this is the first page, just increasing the salary line, decreasing our benefits by 140. Purchase services increasing because, you know, you can obviously tell where we have the more money, and obviously our benefits is where we always carry the extra money, so that's why I was able to decrease that amount. Our purchase services is when we needed to add in some money, because of when we added in the wheel program. And then other services, which is our 500 accounts, like transportation, supplies, is the smaller accounts. Again, our transportation from the increased homeless, so that's usually where that amount came from. So they were pretty easy to pick out when we did it. So that's really it. So then
So let's just pause there, because this is a lot of numbers, or could be a lot of numbers. So let's just pause there. So we got salaries were increased, by a net of 21. Now, what happened was explained all in here, correct?
right,
This
yeah,
is
so
the-
there could be, you know, a deficit in Valley View, but then a surplus in the high school. So I kind of put from the different areas to make the schools, so when it's program, it's by, or not program, location. So each location, so Valley View, district, high school, middle school, those have to all be at 0. So if I see, you know, there was extra salary in, let me see, go back up here. So Valley View, I was able to pull 62,800 from Valley View's salaries because of changing in their staffing. So the second page will explain, so where you see the numbers, the 11011, so when you add and subtract, you get that net amount on the front there.
And just so you know, the staffing changes won't necessarily mean a reduction or an addition of staff. It could mean a change of staff
Right.
from time the budget was created to the time school began. So a teacher may have been allocated for Gildersleeve School during budget time, but was now moved to Valley View because she or he requested a transfer, or we decided to move them.
And we don't
So-
we don't move the money with people, it stays where it's budgeted, so that's why we do that. And that's why usually there's the differences in the end.
And our health insurance account is always our saving grace. We do over budget, you know that. We talked about it during this difficult budget year, and the allocation of additional money from that particular line. But we never know where it's gonna be, because we never know where people are going to, how many people are gonna use it.
Any other questions? Any questions at all?
I just have a question on, in your letter, item A here, per board policy, we're requested to approve budget transfers between major object. Could you just tell, I don't know if you know tonight, or you could bring it to that, which policy is that says that? What policy?
I don't know off the top of my head.
There isn't one, but I just,
Oh, there's,
but if there is one, I'd like to be pointed to it, because I've never found it, there isn't one.
okay.
But I do want to say, this past budget year, I feel like as a board, we've got more accurate, up-to-date information from, at our meetings than we've ever had in the time I've been involved with the board. And I think it's grown over the 4 years I was on the board. I know for me, I can't vote tonight on this anyway, but, you know, it's, you can see the continuum through the year. It brings us to the point where you say, oh, okay, well, that's understandable, you know, you've got that money there. And then my first couple of years of the board, we really didn't see that sort of thing, anywhere nearly as clear. And so, nice job, thank you.
Thanks. Thank you.
The only question I had was on the student transportation item. Is that offset at all by that McKinney-Vento money?
We don't follow, we didn't get approval for it,
Didn't get it.
so it's all out of pocket. We applied for it, but we just never get it.
Any other questions? Is there a motion?
I make a motion that we make the fourth quarter transfers as presented tonight for a total of, you've already got it written down. Let me read it. Well, let me read it. It says that the Board of Education hereby approves the line item fiscal year 2018-2019 with general transfers. Do I need to state the amount? $308,840
As presented tonight.
as presented tonight.
Second.
Seconded by Laurel. Any other discussion? Okay, all in favor? Unanimous. Thank you, Stephanie.
Well done.
Okay. Dates and times for 2020 Board of Education meetings. Everyone should have gotten the post, or this is what you've already filed with,
No, you have to prove it.
oh,
Before.
oh, it's yours.
These are all
Fourth.
Sun Fox still?
Meeting.
They don't have to be.
They could be earlier.
Well, I didn't want to open that up, but.
You did.
I was gonna mention it. We could meet earlier. We meet at 7, 6:30.
7 o'clock is a good time.
It's not, I didn't make a motion, so it's just kind of,
That's fine.
there is one thing that I do want to bring up, and that is, we are not meeting in July, but we will have a new superintendent. So will we want to meet in July? Should we put a tentative date in now, so that we don't have to call a special meeting?
You just have to cancel it
Right,
if they don't have it.
right.
I don't think that's the worst idea, and if, you know, if it's noticed and everyone knows about it, so, you know, we may wanna have even something, a little bit more informal for the board to get to know whoever the successful candidate is for the job.
And the first week in
So-
July
That's probably the 4th.
Yep.
I gave you a calendar,
Oh, yeah, you have it.
Oh,
calendar's in front of you,
okay.
back to back,
Actually, do the sun.
Except July 2020, is it?
it's on different school years.
Yeah, it's,
Oh, sorry. There it is.
Well, July 7th is the
First Tuesday.
first Tuesday, and the 14th after that.
Why don't you do it the second Tuesday, because a lot of people might be away that first Tuesday,
Agreed.
and/or the preparation of it may.
That makes sense.
Okay. I make a motion that we add July 14th to the board calendar for 2020.
And if there's, you know, it may just be a meet and greet with the new superintendent. If there's business, then we'll have that on the agenda. Any other changes anyone wants to discuss? I would just point out, although they're not official meetings of the board, our superintendent search and hiring committee is gonna be very busy in January. So if there's a need for any additional budget meetings, we're gonna have to figure that out. So,
So I'll make a
Hopefully.
motion that we accept the Board of Ed calendar for the year 2020 as presented tonight, with the addition of July the 14th.
is there a second?
Second.
did
Any other discussion?
you wanna know on there the start time? Because the memo doesn't include a start time, and if that's gonna get published,
That's a good idea.
All right, we
Sure.
can add that.
Good,
7 PM.
Good point.
Yep.
At 7, meetings will start at 7 PM.
Okay, all in favor? Unanimous? Okay. Okay. Policy 4112.6, certified, non-certified personnel records, first reading. Finally.
I'm going to attempt to explain this policy subcommittee with Dawn's help, because she was the one that helped us understand it.
Right.
So, this is a relative small change. What's in red is new. What's in black is your existing policy. So right now, I am, on behalf of you, the board, notify an employee and his or her collective bargaining group when a request is made for disclosure for any personnel, medical, or similar files, if I believe disclosure would invade the privacy. Now, the records may be disclosed when I do not believe that such disclosure would legally constitute an invasion of privacy, so therefore, I notify the employee after I've distributed it. All right. It took us a little while to figure this out. We almost tossed it, but then we said it really does, it is coming as a recommendation from CABE, and it really does differentiate based on this new law. It's your first read. Any questions?
Is invasion of privacy defined
It
anywhere
is.
in here?
Legitimate matter of public interest and disclosure of such records would be highly offensive to a reasonable person.
Any other questions? We can take action on it tonight, or we can put it down for a second reading if there's questions or information anybody wants to look into more.
I didn't have any questions.
Okay, is there a motion?
I'll make a motion that we approve policy 4112.6 and 4212.6. A and B.
I think your
Subject
motion,
policies?
just time for a minute, I'm sorry. I think you have to make the motion to waive your meeting requirement by law. I'm thinking that, I don't have it in front of me, so
I don't think we've done that before. We haven't waived,
you haven't.
no.
I mean, we can take action, or,
You don't need to take action, it's no big deal to bring this forward, and we can double check that,
All right,
all right?
all right, so we
Okay.
should check and see if we need 2 meetings, and if there's a bylaw.
community health-based district-wide data and discussion.
So I reference this every year, at least twice a year, I meet with our community health-based counseling team. We have 3 counselors, and then we have a number of management personnel who also attend the meeting. And each year, part of our responsibility is to review the data. This data will be given to the administrative team this week, where we will discuss it and its obvious impact on our students and their learning. I have not heard from anybody anything but superlatives about the work of this 3-person team. We have a counselor, a full-time counselor, here at Portland High School. We have a part-time counselor here at Portland High School as well. So I think it's like a 1.5 FTE. And then we have a 0.5 FTE at Brownstone, and then a 1.0 FTE that's split between Valley View and Gildersleeve. You can see that they are very busy. And one of the topics of discussion at this month's meeting, or last month's meeting, was the addition of yet a 4th counselor because of this increased need. And so while I'm not going to guarantee that now, we have begun the process of identifying grant money for that. It's a federal grant that they do, but on our behalf. But it is pretty clear, and based on the narratives I get, and of course, I can't share with you those more detailed information, but they did break it down by their code, their diagnosis and description codes. And so you can see the plethora of challenges that our poor kids are facing at a very high rate. So, I mean, the fact that we have these 3 counselors is just a true blessing. Questions, thoughts, recommendations?
I think it's a wonderful program, and I think it obviously serves a great need. I just was curious about the community health center's gonna apply for the grant,
Yes.
And is it, we pay them from the grant funds, come to us and we pay them, or they get the grant funds?
They get the grant funds. We get the individual.
Okay. And we don't have to pay them.
We do not pay them.
They, just from my own understanding, they also then individually bill students' insurance companies, is that
Medicaid,
correct?
yeah.
Okay.
Only Medicaid, or if they have other health insurance?
I don't know, Don, do you know this?
Any health insurance.
Right,
Yeah.
yeah, any health insurance, they would
Yep.
bill if the person has it. It's a great program, it's
But
so
no-
needed.
I'm sorry, Tim, but no student is turned away if their insurance won't cover it. They
Right.
find other ways. It's part of what they use things like these federal grants for.
Right, but they just reach out for anything that's
Yeah.
available before that. It's a great program.
Sure is.
It really is, and, you know, this engages parents in the process, and it's very, very valuable.
Yeah, it doesn't require them to go to some service outside of the school. It's got
Which
them
can
in
be-
a natural daytime environment that you can access and,
It can be really difficult for parents to access
oh, yeah.
these services.
And despite the fact that they're not Portland Board of Ed employees, they work with Portland Board of Ed employees in a very important way. And that says also something about their ability as counselors and employees, that they can collaborate with our counselors. And it has to be that way. There has to be that collaboration.
If I could just add, Philip is so right, the quality caliber of clinicians that we've gotten has been phenomenal. And when they are supporting a student, they become part of that student's team, whether it's a PBT or a 504 meeting, something like that, they can be part of that team. And they add such a great support to the child and the family.
We see an increase in personnel from the community health center. I know, the point .5 at Brownstone, is that adequate, given the number of kids that
No,
we're
I think
seeing?
that's why we're gonna add one.
And where is that gonna be added at Brownstone?
It probably will be added at the elementary schools.
Okay. And then the
To be
Wheeler.
shared, so-
The Wheeler Clinic obviously was one of the considerations that we had talked about. Is that in addition to community health center? Or would that, if we were to add the Wheeler Clinic for the elementary schools, and do a pilot again like we did at the high school, would we be reducing community health center counselors, or would that be in
No.
addition to?
No, not at all.
Those are different.
They're two different animals, they really
Right.
are two different
Okay,
animals.
okay,
And we have students that are part of the Wheeler program at the secondary school. That person becomes a clinician, the Wheeler person, and parents engage in that agency, versus the kids that are part of the programming through, community health
CHC.
services, they have a clinician there.
okay.
And we're still in the building process, thinking about our K-6 programming for next year, so
Right.
we don't know who the clinician's going to be or how that's going to work.
Okay, thank you.
Out of curiosity, do you have approval over, when they appoint a new counselor, a new clinician? Is that something you approve, their selection, or do you just trust their judgment?
We meet,
Okay.
yeah, we're introduced to the new counselor. I keep calling him counselor, clinician. I apologize.
So there's no action needed on that.
Nope,
The
nope,
report.
this is information, again, for your perusal.
Thank you for those numbers.
You're welcome.
All right, next we have appointment of trustees, plural, for
Nope,
Gildersleeve Wheeler
just one.
Education Fund.
We're, at this point, just Andy Bauer.
Okay,
Another stalwart member of this team who worked very hard,
is this a reappointment?
a reappointment.
And you need a motion for it?
Yes.
I make a motion that we reappoint Andy Bauer as a trustee to the Gildersleeve Wheeler Education Fund.
Is there a second?
I'll second.
Discussion?
What does this mean about Mayor Dickerson? How do we wait till that, guess she leaves to address that, or we do nothing? I don't understand the whole process.
So, they're in the process right now of identifying potential members who would serve as the Board of Ed appointees. So I think you appoint two annually, the Board of Ed does. So once we have those nominees, we'll bring them forth to you, or nominee, we'll bring it to you.
And you're searching for those nominees?
It's usually done, they usually initiate it, and then it's brought to me. There is some level of collaboration.
Okay, just curious.
Not extensive, but in the past, I've relied on their recommendations. They know the community members. They obviously want to find somebody who has the level of expertise that Mary Dickerson did with the portfolio.
Is that like a designated person that handles that, or is it, you choose?
They
from
could
the-
hire somebody
the
to do
pool?
that, or they could, if they could find somebody who internally could handle it as secretary of the group, bookkeeper of the group.
Okay. So did we have a motion to revote?
I think
Do we
you
vote?
not vote.
Yeah.
Okay, all right, all in favor of reappointment of Mr. Bauer? It's unanimous. Sorry about that. Okay. I think we're ready for Ms. Davis. ESL instruction in Portland.
Good evening, everybody. It's nice to see everybody. Dr. O'Reilly and I have been speaking over the last several months. We've been quite concerned about our number and need of our English language learners increasing in the district in ways that we haven't seen. I definitely haven't seen in the time I've been here, and even looking historically at the data, it has not existed in quite some time. And it's not, like I said, it's not just the number of students that qualify as English language learners, but it's also the intensity. And I've been reporting to you throughout the late summer, early fall, that we've had several newcomers, meaning students who have come here from another country, initially speaking no English at all. And that number includes 4 students at this point. And so what we did is we put together all of the data for you, and that's the report that was uploaded to you last week and is available on the table in the back as well for our audience of citizens, should they be here. But the idea was to give you some background into who are these students, what's their data, what's their information look like. So as of this moment, it's still 41 students in grades K through 12. 30 students are Portland residents, and 11 join us through Open Choice. Most of our students that are designated as EL are Spanish speaking, 27 of the 41, and then I broke down the other languages as well, and their representation. We do have students in all 5 schools, but we have a significant concentration at Valley View and Gildersleeve as well. Very small numbers at Brownstone, Portland Middle, and Portland High School. English acquisition, language acquisition is a complex developmental skill, just like any other of the things that we teach: reading and writing, mathematics, the writing process, all of that. The Connecticut has, in 2015, developed the Connecticut English Language Proficiency Standards, the CELP. And it's a binder. Had I been at my office before I came to this meeting tonight, but which I wasn't, I would have brought. It's a binder about so thick that sits on my shelf, and it's quite extensive. And by following those standards, we are ensured that a student has not just been able to become a successful student, but has successfully learned English in a way that it is truly their second language, and they've fully evolved. If somebody's studying language acquisition, we talk about basic interpersonal communication skills. I minored in Spanish in college. I lived in a heavy Hispanic populated city for many, many years. I can carry on a basic conversation. I wouldn't do it in front of you because I'm pretty embarrassed about my conjugation skills and things like that. But if I had to communicate with somebody to get a point across of what are we having for dinner tonight, I could do that in Spanish. That definitely doesn't mean I'm able to open a Spanish textbook or take notes from a lecturer in Spanish or anything. So I have basic interpersonal skills with Spanish, but I definitely am not to the point that I think in Spanish or I dream in Spanish. Or I was meeting with an EL teacher, Dr. Britton and I were, and she said, and she studied abroad, and and she had studied for many years in college, her newly acquired language. She says, once I woke up dreaming in Spanish, I knew I was there. And that's so true, because you think about it, anything prior to that, we're translating from the beginning language to English, and that's not how we, not a competent student. That's why the state of Connecticut did develop the Connecticut English Language Proficiency Standards. So when we think about our learners, there's 4 levels of language acquisition, and these are the 4 same levels that are measured by the Lost Link scores. You know, I've spoken with you about those every winter. We take them in just between December and March, and then the scores come back to us in May or June. And they're very similar to the score levels that we use for Smarter Balance. Level 1 is a beginner, level 2 is an early intermediate, level 3 is intermediate. And there's 5 levels, proficient, and then above proficient is a 5, so 4 then 5. A student is considered master English and moved out of the EL designation when they have their overall score is either a 4 or a 5, and their reading and writing subtests have to be at least a 4. So for example, we have a student now who his overall score for 2 years now has been a 4, but his reading level, I believe, it's reading or writing, one of them comes in as a 2, so he doesn't qualify for mastery at this point. He's still considered an English learner. When you look at the breakdown of our students, now the students that have just come to us, they haven't taken the Lost Link test yet. They're administered a screener by one of our reading specialists. But we have 20 students right now that are designated a level 1, and that includes 11 students that have been screened and or are newcomers that are just, they're barely speaking any English at all, as well as comprehension. So 20 of our 41 are at level 1, 9 are at level 2, and then 11 are at level 3. And then the last one is that student I was describing. He's a very successful student, and he's doing very well, but he's just not tested out, so to say. So once again, you see that half of our population is at that level 1. And again, that includes our 4 newcomers that are still within 6 months of being in the country. There were also 8 students who are dually identified. That means they're identified as ELs, but they also are identified as students with special education needs. They continue to receive special education services for their learning difficulties or social emotional difficulties, but then they also are entitled to English instruction. So once I summarized just in that last paragraph, item number 6, preceding data showed not as severe of an impact. Now we're really seeing a significant impact. Even as late as the end of last year, we were down to 31 students. A couple exited. We only had 2 that achieved mastery and moved on. A few moved away. So as of July 2019, we had 26 students moving into this new school year. And we were comfortable staying with the goal of using our CERBI model. So our reading specialist, math specialist, the WIN blocks at the elementary and intermediate school, those types of things in order to suit their needs. One of the first indicators in me as director that I started to worry about was when we also revised the job description of the CERBI coordinator to also include some EL type of tasks or responsibilities, including administering the Lost Links, doing the screenings, which we train them for. It's not a complex screening at all, and also managing the data, and then also kind of being the building resident expert. And we got a lot of people that were very interested in the CERBI part, but said, I'm not that expert. I can't be that person. I don't have those skills. I know how to work with kids and try and meet kids' needs, on every student's level, but the EL skills were really scaring people away. And then the beginning of the school year came, and we had our new registrations. We had a lot of people move into district. We also had a couple come in through our EL, or through our open choice door. We have overall an increase of 14 students, and that includes our increase of 4 newcomers. Last year we didn't have any newcomers. We had a few, we had a lot of kids on level 1, but it's not because they were newcomers to the country. So we really do have to look at this through a very, an aggressive lens. We have a responsibility to these students. Stephanie reached out to our Title III people and to Megan Albuquerque Flick, who is the EL consultant for the state. And I meet with Megan quite often, you know, talking about strategies and programming and how to program in what we call a low incidence district. But Stephanie asked a really good question with her, is like, our EL funding, our Title III funding, is a small little bit. You can't even buy a used car with that amount of money that we get. And how do we qualify for more? Our needs have obviously increased. Why are we not, you know, we're still considered part of a low incident district and not qualifying for more funding? And I thought Megan did a really nice job, and Stephanie shared her response with me. Just that, you know, Title III is intended to be supplemental. That EL instruction for language acquisition, that English language acquisition, is designed to be part of Tier 1 entitlement. It's not a special area such as special education. And she also went on to talk about what's mandated by the state, what's best practice, and what's recommended. Now, we're not mandated to have necessary a TESOL person in every building or a TESOL person for every number of students, but what is recommended and the state is really pushing districts to is at least one person in district that's trained in English language acquisition. And, you know, train more than a student services director that has, you know, I have experience in it, but I've never implemented a full-blown program. And I don't think Charles has either. We have experience with supporting a TESOL person, but it's not our area of expertise. So that comes down to our request for the board to consider, and that we have immediate need to provide support for this population of students. Our reading specialists are completely maxed out. They're doing a beautiful job with Serby and all the buildings, but at the same time, this is an intensive amount of students. I'm recommending that we hire a certified teacher of speaker of other language, the TESOL acronym, half-time, to meet the academic and language needs of these students. Charles and I we did post just to see if we could find somebody. I belong to CAPEL, which is the Connecticut Administrators of Programs of English Learners, and you know, when I go to those quarterly meetings, you know, people will ask, well, does anybody have a half-time person, or you know, and good TESOL teachers are very hard to find. But we did post and we held preliminary interviews just to see if we could even attract somebody, because it's no help to come and ask for money if there's not going to be a person out there. And we found 3 really good candidates that were willing and eager to work for the half-time position. So, and these are people that are one of our most telling questions was, we don't have a curriculum, we don't have a classroom that's all set up with all the materials. We have a list of students that qualify, and we need somebody that can come in and implement a comprehensive program across 5 buildings, across 41 students with varying levels of needs. What would you do with that? And the 3 candidates that we really liked really had good, thorough answers. They talked about, you know, programs that they've used. They've talked about resources that they've found great success with. They've talked about the state standards and the recommendations from the state. So these were very knowledgeable people. And you know, somebody that we could work in concert with and help navigate the, you know, supervise them as a navigator and a facilitator in our roles, but at the same time that person would become our resident expert for English language acquisition and facilitation of programming. So questions?
I have a lot of questions.
Me too.
One of the things that I did was I went and I looked what best practices are for TESOL teachers. And I won't even get into curriculum, whether it's a 50-50 class or it's a dual language or whatever. I looked at our policies for language learners, English language learners, and I also looked at the state of Connecticut policies. This is really complicated, and I think getting a body in and developing a program mid-year is going to be problematic. What I see is a need for a number of children over 20 who speak one language to have a teacher, that we're mandated to have a program. It's got to be approved by the commissioner the
That's
Department of
in
Education?
20 students within one building.
Within one building, okay, so then I
Within
missed
one
that
building,
part.
yes.
Okay.
And that's,
So-
that we have to, if,
Right.
that what Meg's speaking to, sorry to interrupt Meg,
Yeah,
but
no,
what
that's
Meg's
okay.
speaking to is this, the state requirement that if you have 20 students or more speaking in one specific language in a building, you are required to offer the parents a bilingual program, so that they have opportunity to have learning in both their native language and their acquiring language.
And the other thing that I saw in our policy was that we offer 30 months of instruction with the hopes that a student would learn the language and acquire the proficiency that they need, that, you know, that then puts us in a position to continue to offer services. So it seems to me very complicated, and the problem didn't come, you know, this year. There were kids coming from China and Poland and in years past, and it fell on library people and technology people to work with kids. I was one of them. So I know the concern is here. I'm kind of on the fence about spending money mid-year for somebody who's probably going to be very expensive to get, and then to buy all the materials and equip a classroom. The other thing that I saw in the legislative part of it was that if we identify students that have a need, the following year we would have to have a program. So again, it may be language that I've missed, but I'm just concerned mid-year that we're spending money that we may not have.
Well, we don't have a choice to identify or not. We have to identify if we do a language screen.
Our policy clearly, our policy
We-
really indicates.
Yep, we have to identify. What happens is the following year, if we have, for example, the 20 students, one language, one building, is not the year that it happens, because we could have 15 kids move to Valley View next year that speak Spanish and have to, you know, it's not that year, it's the following
It's the
year.
following
You
year.
have to offer the parents the option for a bilingual program.
Okay,
And-
thank you.
And one of the things that we're looking at is not, these students will not be pulled out of their regular classrooms and put into an EL classroom or a sheltered program. These students, we all know that the best language acquisition for little people is in their classroom, especially when we look at the elementary levels, because everything that an elementary classroom teacher is doing is language rich. It's developing vocabulary, it's building word relationships, it's working on phonics. All of those things are very important. This would be supplemental. So not pulling, and the logistics are right there, because we have 41 kids across 5 buildings. That person is going to have to, you know, have a plan to serve it. You know, just like our speech pathologist. Our speech path she has 4 buildings. She has a caseload of about 68 kids. She doesn't get to live in one building. She has to work between the different buildings.
Well, and that's my concern too, is that if we put a .5 person in and she's got 5 buildings, that, you know, how is she going to manage to get to all the kids, all 41 of them? So I do have some concerns, and I know that there's a need, clearly, it's been there.
I was going to ask, what does service for an ELL student look like? So you mentioned the WIN blocks. Say you have a level 1 student, maybe a first grader. How often will that first grader be expected to have ELL? And is it one-on-one? Is it small group? What does it look like?
Well, especially if we look like the Valley View grouping, or even Gildersleeve as well, it's going to be small groups, and it's going to be targeted instruction and vocabulary, again, some of the things I just mentioned, phonics, things like that. To sit and tell you right now that, you know, a second grader is going to have 4.5 hours, I can't do anything like that. The idea was, and these are some of the models that the candidates that we spoke about, is to have focus groups within each building and meet with them on regular basis. And also, one of the best things I loved about the candidates we spoke with is the importance they stress on collaborating with the classroom teachers. So if they're going to be, the other thing we know about language acquisition, just like working with a student with learning disabilities, is there's strategies that work really well. Pre-teaching concepts, front-loading vocabulary, review and practice with vocabulary afterwards, setting up graphic organizers for teaching, setting up sentence starters and things like that. All of those types of strategies that also work well with our students exhibiting issues in learning work really well with EL students. So it would be, the collaboration with classroom teachers is going to be really important.
I'm also wondering, is there any TESOL training provided for an average special ed person that has a master's degree? Or is this something that's not even touched upon by their education?
No, for state of Connecticut pre-service training, it's not, it's mentioned that it's required to program specially for students to make sure that they are meeting those standards, those CELT standards, but it's not I haven't seen anything on any pre-service training programs.
The only thing I could find for best practices was out of USC, and it's a School of Education, and it's a master's degree.
Right.
And it's a specific master's degree because it's so complicated. I have a question because it did say in the legislation that you could waive certification for native speakers who could teach. And I know we have two Spanish-speaking people on staff, Denitza Goldburn and Maritza Elam, both speak Spanish and have done translations and things. Have we considered employing or having either one of them do any kind, I know Denitza will do instruction and back and forth with parents, home to school kinds of things, but have we considered
Yeah,
non-certified?
we haven't looked at doing that. You know, both people are very highly effective in the two roles that they carry. One is a paraeducator, and the other is a school secretary, and they both do they hold important jobs now.
Yeah, they do.
And neither of them have said anything about wanting to become teachers or anything like that. Because it is a high-need area, there's lots of room for DSAP and things like that for people that have had specialized training, or people that are native speakers and want to go back and gain certification. But we haven't looked at pulling those people out of their current roles.
Dave, did you have a question? Did you have a
Oh, yeah,
question?
I do. I was a little confused in the beginning, and I'm just not familiar with it. We don't get any extra funding for having a certain threshold of students that require this extra need?
No, the only thing that will change is we will, because our numbers went up this year, our Title III will go up, but it's not a clear algorithm, like,
Yeah.
3x
Right.
times. It's, and what
Has to do-
Stephanie,
Has to do with the total number of students in the state. It also has to do with other states and their needs. So it doesn't necessarily mean that our funding would go up.
She said it's about $150 a student that we get.
So,
So,
It's not enough.
I mean, I've been talking with districts that have a similar makeup to ours, and most of them are using Title I funding, because Title I does
Yeah.
address reading and writing instruction and like that. So some districts are using Title I funding, and just like Megan said in her email to Stephanie, it's an entitlement. It's not it's they're entitled to that education. So
And our
And-
Title I funding
Yeah.
is directed at reading instruction.
Do we know what these people would be hired at in terms of, and what the program supplies would look like if we were to?
I looked into some of the online programming, like National Geographic has a really comprehensive program that's all online, and that would tie in nicely with our one-to-one initiative and like that. So there are ways, and we could fund that through the EL funds that we do get through Title III. I'm not so worried about the programming needing materials right now. I think we could get through the rest of this year funding in what we're doing. And then, thinking about big picture for next year as we build our budget.
And salary for somebody that would be a .5? I
So
mean,
before we identify the individual, what we have identified is that standard rate that we identify, and we use that $57,000 mark. So it would be .5 for salary. Pardon me?
if the person were to be hired for the first of the year, there'd be 12 pays left in the year, so it'd be $15,811 to spend for the rest of the year for a .5, if we hire at the M6.
Right.
That's salary and benefits?
No, well, so .5 get benefits,
Yes,
they do, so.
prorated benefits.
Prorated. So so benefits, say it's a two-person, I don't know who the candidates are, if they'd be taking benefits or not. I mean, a two-person is $17,410.
For a full year.
1.0 FTE, right?
Oh, yeah, so it would be prorated then, huh?
Yep, and
So-
it would be cut in half,
Half.
then it would be prorated based
Because of when
on,
they start.
their 50%. Because by teacher contract, benefits are prorated.
Okay.
So approximately
So some
$25,000
fraction of that.
to hire somebody.
Probably, yeah. And that's if, if it's a single person, it'll be less than that.
And I don't honestly remember the steps that the people that we were meeting with were on.
Nor do we identify.
Right.
It's not part of our process. So the question would, the board chair asked me, you were told at our last meeting, or I shared with you those additional open revenue, open choice revenue. And that's where the identified money would come from.
Okay.
Well, so
That's
that's
what I was
gonna
curious
ask,
about.
because 25% of that Rutgers open choice students, is that,
Is there open choice money?
well, I just wonder, in addition to whatever else, is there,
Yeah.
are we eligible to get some kind of reimbursement for that, if you're paying that extra money for
From open choice.
those services? I know of some services we are eligible to get
Yeah.
reimbursement for.
We're
I don't
looking
know.
at-
I don't know, that's something that we were going to look into, just to see if there, for example, if we have a open choice student that requires $40,000 in additional programming because of their special needs, and it's in their IEP, we do get reimbursement from Hartford on that. And
Yeah.
I'm not sure, it's something that, we've started discussions, but I don't know the exact answer on that.
And are there any, like, consulting firms or groups that do that sort of, that could come in and, under a contract with Portland and do the groundwork necessary to create that program and then hand it over to whoever internally can operate it?
There
I don't know,
is,
yeah.
there is.
I
I
was
did,
wondering what that would cost
yeah, I
versus
mean,
hiring.
I reached out to Crec and to have a consultant come out just to meet with our teachers and like teach best practices for working with EL students. It was gonna be quite sizable. It was gonna be $60,000 to $70,000 a year just to have that person come out and work and do the PD and all of those steps.
What
And
do we
that's
pay
not-
our BCBA, or through CREC? Isn't it around $60,000 to $70,000?
Between the BCBA, the BCABA, and Caroline Redpath and her work, it's almost $100,000. Yeah, yeah, because when you contract with those consulting firms, they want their time covered, but then they also, all the overhead that gets charged as well. CREC is quite expensive when we contract with them. And we get who they send, not, it's not somebody that we necessarily pick, we get who they
We
send.
are entitled through open choice. They have a very limited number of consultants who would come and work with a teacher as a possibility. But I don't know of anybody that would actually do the work.
Right.
Would this be similar, and I think you might have touched on this, but just as I process. Is it similar to, like I think you said that we get some reimbursement through Hartford for special ed costs for our open
Yeah,
choice
I-
students?
that's
Would
what
this
we're-
be similar?
I'm gonna check.
Yeah, we're still in the process of finding that out, whether we can directly bill for, overages, like we do in special education. I'm not sure how that's gonna work. In special ed, it's very concrete. If it's in the IEP and we develop a dollar amount for it and we bill for it, I'm not sure what that would entail.
So what about the overlapping students? The ones that are both EL and special ed?
So those students are served under their IEP for their special education needs, but they still are entitled to EL
Additional
instruction.
services for,
Yes.
So would this .5 position work with those students as well, just as to the EL portion? of
It
their-
depends on the students. I wouldn't say no to any student, but I would stress that we have to look at what's the biggest mitigating factor.
Yep.
And we have some students that are particularly impacted through their special education needs, that the EL instruction would look different than a typical peer who's able to receive EL instruction.
Is it safe to assume that in those situations, the consulting model would be the one that would be
Exactly.
employed?
Yep.
And in addition to the cost of the actual position, are there programming costs or supplies or other things?
Those, I think, at this point, we could cover through our current Title III grant funding. To get us through the rest of this year and build a basis for.
Stephanie, can you tell us what our title, or what is our title? $3,000.
Well, this year's allocation is 4,000, and then last year's allocation, which we haven't, we have a 2-year window to spend it. We did not spend last year's. But I think we have a little under 3,000 left
Yeah,
on
like
that one as well.
2,700.
Yeah. So those two together.
You know, if you can get a good candidate, you know, because ELL, I mean, TESOL certification is pretty rare, and especially someone who has it and is willing to work half-time, you know, what's that expression, there's like, good ELL teaching is really just good teaching, you know, and that might be a real support to a lot of our teachers who are probably struggling
They are.
to work with kids.
Right.
Because, I mean, I can't imagine that your typical Portland teacher has any background in.
Many do not,
Yeah.
and that's their fear. You're right. That's
Yeah.
their fear is, I don't have experience in this. Tell me what to do.
Right.
And you also have behavior issues derived completely from kids who are not speaking English. Some of the behavior we saw was directly related, they didn't understand.
So it's a good opportunity to have somebody in with the support network, you know, support resource for our teachers. So it's good.
I agree.
So I just asked an aside question of Dr. O'Reilly as to whether this is the type of resource that we could look to share or look to
you go.
surrounding districts as a, you know, kind of a regional approach.
So
And,
it's a good question. If I can talk about
Well,
our,
I just told her that it became a topic of discussion when we met with the superintendents from East Haddam and East Hampton. Now, those are only two. But we were the only ones that had any significant population. In
They
fact, some
had-
of them had, I think East Haddam had 0.
0, and the other one had 3 students in their whole
is
district.
this a reported statistic in the different school districts?
It is part of our, it is part of like the district report card and all of that, the numbers. But it's always old data. Like if you looked at our report card online right now, it's going to show data from 2 years ago. So
One related point from that woman that Dawn had spoken about in her email, she also said, your district is not alone in seeing the significant increase in ELs, especially this year. High, middle, and low incident EL districts have reported great influxes.
And I did do a little, I mean, because we've been looking at this growing trend. I've been talking with you about it for my 3rd year now. I did reach out to the Middletowns and the Glastonburys and the Cromwells because they have the potential to, maybe they've got a person that they're only keeping on as half-time, but
Right.
we could share that person and we could use the other half or something like that. And
I know one of the models in Middletown, because my granddaughter speaks Italian and English. She comes in primarily from an Italian-speaking household. She was in a dual-speaking class with any kid who didn't speak English. So there was Chinese, there was African, there was Spanish, there was Italian. It was a mixed bag, but she was specifically put into a class to learn English with all these other kids. So that was kind of an interesting concept, which
Yeah,
didn't
Middletown
really
has-
work well.
Has a full-time ELL teacher we have 3. One for the, like, K3, one for like 4, 6. And I mean, really Middletown could probably use twice that
Yeah.
number. So I don't
That's
know
what
that
Middletown
that's-
told
yeah,
me.
okay.
Yeah,
And
Yeah.
Cromwell doesn't have a population comparable that we could justify sharing services with them.
No, they have, last I spoke with her, she had 1 full-time and, yeah. and
Well,
then-
one full-time teacher,
Yeah,
yeah,
and they
yeah.
can't, there was no, they had no spare time.
and they need 2,
Yeah.
at least,
Yeah.
yeah.
Right?
Well,
Interesting.
So-
Interesting stuff.
Yeah.
Do we think do we have to make a motion to do this, or?
I'd like to urge you to support this request from Dawn. This is a request that's been coming at me that I've held up for months and months and months because of our budget situation. I've identified this area where we can use this resource, we can fund this resource, and it's going to be in your budget for next year.
Good.
I would ask that you support it now. It's a relatively small amount of money, and for us to get started on this would be a great asset for this district.
And it covers.
This is a
through-
huge transition for this district, I understand that,
Yeah.
but it is one that is justified by the numbers that she presented to you tonight.
Do you
And-
need us to make a motion?
Yes.
And do.
This is a new position. I would need your authorization to go forth and hire a point FTE tonight.
Do we put a dollar amount on it?
I would prefer you didn't. I'll
Okay.
report back to you once we know that information.
I would make a motion that we hire a .5 FTE TESOL position.
Second.
Yeah, I think we ought to.
Any further discussion?
Yeah, I was gonna bring up when we kind of abruptly ended the discussions earlier, but, as we get into the budget season and you see a growing need, is this going to evolve into something bigger for the next budget?
Oh, it will.
You know, are we doing a half now, go to a full later type of thing?
I think we put in the half.
Okay, I was just curious about that.
I don't have enough information to justify the 1.0 FTE right now. I'm not saying that, I mean, if the numbers increase,
Yeah, if she's seen a trend.
we're gonna have to
you know.
identify, well, we'll, or you'll be at that same place, the same place next year to increase this, but we'll see where the numbers go.
I guess that's a question for you. We're sitting here, if you had your druthers, would you want a full one versus a half?
Well, it's kind of what Chris said about Middletown, they've got 3, but they could use 6. I mean, could we use a 1.0?
yeah.
Definitely, and, but I also recognize we're bringing this in the middle of the game, and to ask for that right now. Now,
Okay.
we could get this up and running over the next couple of months, and then as we go through the budget process, talk about a need. But right now, we have nothing, so, we've gotta,
Let's start somewhere.
right.
Another thing to look at too is, in addition to having a teacher position, there's, if you had tutors as well, that's sometimes a good Band-Aid, to have some kind of resource for kids.
And,
Especially if you're gonna take one half-time teacher and split over that many schools. I mean,
Right, right.
that's crazy. So tutors are relatively,
And that was
inexpensive way to provide
a good
service.
question Dr. O'Reilly brought up to me when we first started talking about, posting the position and doing a little
Sure.
fishing expedition, so
Right.
to say, was can we do it with tutors? And if it was an existing program, that we already had a certified person in there, I'd say by all means, but to do that and not have the,
Right.
the leeway or the knowledge to instruct those tutors, I think would be, I don't know, it would be the best use of our funds, but
Right.
you're totally right, tutors
Moving forward.
and supports within the building that work under that TESOL teacher, definitely.
It's the model that we use for special education. It's the model we use for behavior challenges now.
Yeah.
We train others, but we need to have that.
Right. Need to have that
Trained
person
person.
driving the bus, so to
Yeah.
say.
Right.
Yeah.
Okay, questions on the table? Any further questions, discussion? All in favor? Okay, unanimous. Thank you.
everybody.
Thank you.
Okay. Old business. Nothing personal. Carl? Proposal for facilities assessment planning. Are we have?
No, I was just gonna see Dawn on the way out if I could, but I wanna give you this. This is just I'm gonna give it to you, actually, because you're the person on the committee. These are just the updated numbers. I didn't copy the whole report as you and I agreed to, but it's just the updated numbers when he gets to that. Okay?
So I'm coming before you tonight to make a request to hire a company, Sightlines, who is part of the Gordian Corporation, who we currently do business with through, probably I would say, through the state permit and everything like that. We can take a job and instead of going out to a big formal bid, Gordian can come in here and assess the situation, put a value to it, send it to us, and we can move forward with the project rather than going through a major bidding thing. So I am requesting this to have an evaluation done of our buildings from the top of the chimney to the basement. Just a little history here. I've been working here since 1988, and I've seen things from the ADA code compliance work done here all the way up to this facility renovated as today, to the additions at Gildersleeve, the additions at Valley View School, the things that have been done at the Brownstone Intermediate School, which is a lot of work. We're at a point where we're there again. I think we're heading towards a bond. to get things. We have roofs that are in dire straits. We have just recently lost a boiler at Valley View School. We're operating the building on one boiler right now. We are out to bid as we speak, and that bid will be closing, I think, the 17th to get that project done. I think that's where you're gonna see where some of this transfer money is gonna be going from the Board of Selectmen, from the Oak Hill money that's come in there. So what the sightlines assessment will give us, they will go through, evaluate everything from the roofs to the windows to floors to boiler rooms to gymnasiums to everything in these buildings. The cost of it is $36,400 to do the 3 elementary schools as well as this facility too. This facility was completed in 2005, and it's already starting to show its wear and tear.
Dave, you wanna pass that out and explain what that is?
I'm not sure what he's passing.
All he's doing is the revised number that came as a
Okay.
result of the subcommittee meeting, asking you to get the revised
Right.
number.
So originally, originally we were gonna do the 3 elementary schools, Gildersleeve, Valley View, and the Brownstone Intermediate School. And the Buildings and Grounds Committee at our meeting, and Sharon was also there, we decided to reach out to them and ask them to also evaluate this building, because by the time we got everything done with that, and if we are gonna be going for bonding money, we're probably gonna be looking for more. It was a great idea. So the price went, I think it was like $24,000 to $36,000 to just total package to add this building. So that's, my recommendation would be, to move forward with that evaluation, which we would not do until after July 1.
And so this would be a budget item,
This would be a
not
budget item.
expenditure item now.
Okay.
It's not a capital expense item or anything like that. This will have to come out of our operating budget, correct?
In,
In 2021.
2021.
Right.
And, did they give you any estimate, Carl, of how long it would take?
He didn't, we kinda kept going back and forth. I think honestly, it's a matter of, I would probably say about a month.
Oh, okay.
I don't think I think they're gonna come in here with a whole team. I think that's one of the reasons why the price is so cheap to move and add this building is, because once they mobilize and come here, they come here with a big team of people, and they just go through
They
everything.
do everything.
And probably
That's
the
good.
easiest time of the year for them to do that would be over the summertime when nobody's around.
Has our district ever done anything like this before?
Not to my knowledge,
No.
not to my knowledge, we have not.
I think it's a great
I
idea.
think honestly, moving forward, I think bonding is gonna be inevitable. I think it's the only way you can pay for things. Things just cost too much money today. Years ago, they did things, they'd go out and buy a new fire truck and they'd pay for it. You can't even do, that's $800,000 and up, or, so I think it's just something that, just say for an example, one of my thoughts is that if we did a bond for X amount of dollars for 20 years, I think at the end of 20 years, you're gonna be there again. I think it's gonna be an ongoing thing, whether it's the same thing you're doing with your home, with a, home equity loan, or whatever you're doing. I just don't see how you could ever try to keep your budget operating and not do it that way.
And
That's just my belief.
their report's also gonna include recommendations for
Yes.
planning and regular maintenance on things and that kind of
So
stuff.
they will identify everything, and they will grade everything per se in these buildings, just to say, at Portland High School, the windows are, were installed 2003, 4, when the building was built. They're in good condition at this point, but if you were to replace them, it would be X amount of dollars per square foot.
And what their estimated life would be, and,
Yes.
yeah, that's
Where
good.
will they start? Will they start at the lower elementary
great.
schools and then move up?
It's very helpful.
I think
You
they'll
don't
start
know.
with, I think honestly, the whole thing is, they would probably
They just
come in
do it
with
all at once.
several teams of people to do this.
Okay.
Now, does this proposal, I thought when I read through it the first time, it indicated that they would come back and update too, or?
I don't
if
think they're
we-
gonna come back and update and reevaluate. I think they would come back and go through some stuff with us to organize which direction we may wanna go.
Okay.
Were you thinking of the ongoing piece?
Maybe, I was looking at the
Or
short,
the
mid, and
ability
long-term.
to pay a fee every year,
I
have them
think we
update
do
the
that.
plan.
But Sharon, I don't know honestly that we would need that. I think
Right.
once we got this initial investment done,
Yeah.
the investment into this done, the evaluation done of these buildings, my thought is that now we can make a plan and move forward.
Right, yeah.
We're gonna have a number to work with, and I think we can move forward, and then that process is gonna take some time. But, you know, the bond on this building is not paid off yet. I don't think it's paid off until 2023, I'm thinking.
Sounds about right.
I think they have it staged, from what I heard.
They
Some
do,
of it's
and
coming
it's
off every
dropping
year.
off.
Yeah, yeah.
Dropping off, but there's some things here honestly that are not gonna make it till 2023. So right now, we are also, just so you know, we're doing the boiler, at Valley View's out to bid right now, and that closes on 17th. We also are gonna be doing or proposing to do a $43,000 roof repair at Valley View School over the library and around the library area only. That's not the whole building. There's a domed peak on that that's all shingles. Those totally need to be replaced. Then the rubber roof and the drainage system down around the bottom of it needs to be replaced and repaired as soon as we can. It may not be able to happen till spring.
Yeah.
But that needs to happen before this evaluation.
That needs to happen now.
Yeah, can't wait.
It's easy.
We can't wait on that. And I believe, if I can say, I believe this Oak Hill money, correct? Correct, this Oak Hill money going to maintenance is gonna help pay for these things. Being transferred by the
Well, in
boards.
subsequent years.
It needs, yeah.
And that's the whole idea of putting it in your maintenance account. It becomes a permanent part of your budget.
Does this include, this is just the building, so it wouldn't include like the grounds?
So,
The parking and, you know, all that kind of stuff?
I said to the committee, I'm comfortable handling that myself.
Yeah, okay.
I've done quite a bit of an evaluation on that.
Yeah.
If, in your capital budget, you'll see things that are identified in there, I can handle that part of
Okay.
that. Easy enough.
So this is gonna go into our upcoming budget. Do we need to take action? Are you looking for a vote?
Consensus that this is what, it's gonna appear in your budget?
And when cuts start happening, this
Yeah.
can't get touched.
Right.
It makes sense. I mean, that was the intent of
Yeah,
It makes sense.
your directive to me to put it in your budget. If you reach consensus, you don't have to vote, because you're gonna approve a budget with it in there.
Yeah, that's great.
All right?
I think it's a great idea.
Necessary.
All right. Thanks, Carl.
Thank you.
You need me for anything else? Want me to
I
spend more
need you
money?
for a lot. Not tonight.
Thank you.
Next is the superintendent of school search. As I indicated earlier, January is gonna be a busy month for this board. We have, some dates picked out once the, application, window closes. We're gonna have a special meeting on January 8th, to talk about the community, input to, what we're looking for in our next superintendent, and then, go forward from there with scheduling interviews and, moving forward. So, those dates were previously discussed with the board at our hiring committee. Does anybody wanna go over those again?
Yep.
Aside from the January 8th special date, I think everybody else, we have the others.
January 13th, January 20th on the
And then the
calendar.
30th
And the 30th, January
for,
30th,
interviews
for interviews.
at this point.
It's coming up.
Yeah. Any other questions
May
or
I ask a
comments?
question?
Maybe.
Budget question?
Yeah.
what do you want Stephanie to put into the budget for a salary?
I see in the, I got a copy of the AASA listing of 170 to 190, but I don't know, so you'd have to tell us what you think. Or if you've decided,
We have,
oh, you haven't, okay.
Yep, not yet,
we haven't.
but we will.
Then we'll just, I think what we decided, then we'd carry what is in there currently, without an increase. Isn't that what we decided?
I think it's safe to assume that would be plenty.
Okay.
Okay, any other comments about the superintendent search?
Okay, we'll stop it there.
That's aspirational. And committee reports. Okay, we have
Thank you very much.
been provided with a list of our committees. And we can review those assignments. Curriculum.
Did we have to do something with the calendar?
No.
Did you say you are gonna review them?
Yeah.
So I really am unable to make the timing of the curriculum subcommittee meetings, so I just wanted to put that out there that, I'm not much use on the curriculum subcommittee because I cannot attend the meetings.
Do you know when they meet,
From my
Laurel?
list.
Yeah, it's
Yeah.
it's like the second Wednesday of the month at 2:45 usually.
I would love to be on the curriculum subcommittee, and I believe that I will be able to attend the meetings.
Great. I think
I've
our,
always had that issue with policy too. That's so hard for me to get to that.
Yeah, sometimes
I
we
think-
meet at 5:30 or 6, depending on what we have in front of us.
we could just stick with curriculum. I'm trying to find my list. I believe that we have two. Are we allowed two?
Yep.
Yeah, it's Curly, Eric, and Laurel.
Yeah.
2 right now.
Okay, and Laurel, you're not able to,
I'm
Forward.
not able to attend the meetings.
okay. Well, I would be interested in attending those, but I can't commit to every one. If it's once a month, I can pretty much set that time aside, I think. So, we'll probably rely more on you, Lauren. But I'd like to attend when I can, yeah. Yep.
Second Wednesday, 2:45.
Mhm.
Thank you. Is that here at the high school?
Yes. It's usually the middle school.
It's in the
Okay.
middle school.
The middle school,
Technology.
It's their tech room.
yeah.
If you email Charles,
Okay.
he'll start sending you, he'll maybe send you some
Okay.
First
backlog
one
of
on the
minutes and
left
tell you
is,
where.
or second one on the left as you go in down the music corridor.
Okay.
Okay, so I was looking at the list as on our agenda, but, next would be policy.
I would stay on policy.
Yeah, and like I said, I'm on that, but that is just, it's so hard for me to get to
Difficult.
that.
Yes,
Okay.
I would stay on policy.
Okay,
I'd be interested in joining policy if you are looking to get off, but if you wanna stay on.
No, I think if you have somebody who attends more regularly, it's probably more useful than just having me in name only.
We meet before the Board of Ed meeting,
Yep.
every time,
Okay.
check out.
good. All right, then operations and finance and budget, that's all of us.
Yeah.
Personnel, I'm looking to stay on there,
Yeah, I'd be interested in
Marty.
continuing with that.
coming up with some ideas for our next round.
And I think I'd like to join personnel as well. We discussed that a while ago, and I think I'm ready to commit to a second committee.
Okay? When do we, no,
Even Laurel,
Meet
just
on the schedule.
even with Conservation and Renewal Task Force?
Yeah.
Okay.
I mean, that seems to come and go.
as will personnel, I think we're,
Yeah.
Right now, you're in
Good.
a lull.
we're in a lull for at least, I think, a year.
Well, I
Yeah.
think you're gonna have to start this summer.
Oh, okay,
Yeah.
Yeah.
just don't say January.
No.
Enough for
Post
January.
Philip.
Ah, okay. All right, Conservation and Renewable Task Force, we have Laurel, Chris, Meg,
I'm an alternate because we can't have
right?
3 board members, so if one of you can't go, then I would go.
Well, it
We
was
can have
Laurel,
3.
Eric
Eric,
was on.
and
It's not
Chris,
gonna
Right.
be-
so Do the three of you wanna stay?
I'll stay
Is
on.
anybody
I'll
else
stay.
interested?
Yep. Well, anybody else wants to jump in? No?
Okay,
Can I just repeat, so conservation is gonna be Laurel, Chris, and Meg?
correct. Buildings and grounds is Dave and
Was Eric, I
Eric
think.
and Meg,
Yeah.
and
When
myself.
does that meet?
I'll stay on building and
Usually
grounds.
late afternoon, 4:30,
Yeah.
Yeah.
Oh,
four,
okay.
4:30.
I'd be willing to
I
get
can do that.
involved.
Okay, so we have, who's currently there? I don't have it on the list.
Dave.
It's
Dave,
Eric, I'm
Eric,
sorry,
Eric.
David?
Meg,
Meg,
for board members.
Okay,
Just-
for just Dave,
Dave, Eric, and Meg.
okay. So, Meg, you wanna stay?
Yep, I'll stay. on.
Dave wants to stay?
Yep.
And Tim?
I
You
would
looking?
get involved with
Did
that.
anybody else, did anybody else?
I mean, I'd be
interested
interested, but you don't need all of us on it, so.
Can't have a quorum.
Well, can you have two,
Well, Chris-
are there, does somebody already have two? Like, Meg, are you already on two?
I'm on two also.
Well, I'm only on one if I'm off.
Yeah, that's what I was
policy,
coming
and
to.
it
Oh,
makes
well, I guess-
sense.
okay, well then put,
You go ahead.
Okay.
Yeah,
All right.
put Chris on,
You're off
yeah.
and Dave's on.
That's
I mean,
that.
Chris is on.
Chris and,
Okay.
Tim
Tim.
and Dave.
No.
Mhm.
Chris and
No.
Meg and Dave.
Right,
Oh,
Dave,
Chris, Meg, and Dave.
that too, yep.
okay, I'm sorry. I thought you decided
Well,
one,
no, I-
two,
That's what I,
three. Didn't you think that?
I
No.
thought it was me and Dave and Meg.
Okay.
Yeah,
Meg's
that's
been
what,
on.
Yeah.
that was,
All right,
Meg and Dave
sorry.
have
Tim
been on.
said he's already.
we're just trying to
Chris,
Okay.
Dave,
make
Meg,
it
now I got it.
difficult.
Correct liaison.
Isn't always.
Can you correct liaison?
Oh, God, no.
I think we had a volunteer.
I will go, I was wondering if you wanted to go sometime and when you can't go, I'll
I'll
go.
definitely go as alternate.
Yeah,
Yeah,
let's
'cause
do
if
that.
They have an opening, we can have a regular and an alternate, I'll absolutely do alternate.
All right,
Yeah.
perfect,
Yeah,
okay.
no, that's
Cause
fine.
I can
Yeah,
go in
think
the
you'll
middle of the
enjoy it.
day,
It's a
and,
good-
yeah, I can go in the middle of the day.
Yeah, I found it hard this last year to
I know,
to get
yeah.
there on
No,
Wednesday
I'm good in the middle of the
Wednesday
day.
mornings. But,
All right, and correctly, sorry, selectmen liaison, Dave? Still interested in that? Anybody else? Suppose we could, anybody can go to those meetings.
Yeah, I didn't make
I think
many of
Dave-
them. Dave did.
Really done a nice job
Did a
of
nice
giving
job.
us that report.
Thanks.
I appreciate the feedback,
Yeah.
the emails you send to me too, to say, hey, this
Yeah.
occurred, or didn't understand this, explain it, so.
Can I ask, is it okay that that I'm only on one? Are we expected to be on two or more?
That's fine.
Just getting my feet wet.
That's a
Yeah.
nice way to start.
Okay.
Yeah, really.
Ease into it.
I think that's probably preferable than signing up for everything.
Yeah, I'm nervous, okay.
All right, audience of citizen. Okay.
For hanging in there, Jen.
Board of Education member comments.
Sharon, can I just ask one
I'm
question
sorry,
before you
sure.
go back? I wanna go back to the Board of Ed meeting dates. You mentioned about putting the time in.
7
My-
p.m.
My only concern is you never put the time in, because if you change the time for any reason, there's special meetings.
Oh.
You put time, if I put the time in this letter, and I know in summertime, sometimes you meet earlier, and sometimes your budget meetings are earlier. So if you ever
Okay.
want to change the time of the meeting, and it's in this, if you have 7 PM in this letter to Ryan, then any change would
I
be
see.
considered a special meeting.
Okay, so we just put the time on the
Yes,
agenda.
and we always have
and post
text,
the
like,
agenda.
you know, in the beginning, like on our website, or even the general calendar
Yep,
on the website.
Okay.
It has a time, so.
that's fine. Take it off of there, yeah.
Okay, just wanted to
That makes more
clarify
sense.
that with you guys.
Okay, any other comments from the Board of Ed?
I wanna say one thing, that, the website for the Board of Ed looked really good. It,
Holster.
it's done, it's really, for a while I was looking at it and I see everybody else's and I'm like, this is awful. And all of a sudden, I went in the other day and it was like, wow, this is great, and it's easy to find things. So congratulations to Holly, did a great job.
She is a remarkable
Yes, she is,
employee.
yes, she is.
Okay, any other
And
comments?
lots of changes still are gonna occur.
I'm sure there are, but that's
I'll
okay.
comment, just thank you for welcoming me back. It's unfortunate,
It is
obviously,
unfortunate.
the Eric's
That's what
situation,
understand it, yes.
but I appreciate the support I was given when I wasn't gonna be here, and then the welcoming when I came back.
It's like tending your own funeral.
Kinda sorta, yeah. But anyway, thank
just expect the cake at some point.
Yeah.
Bring cake.
Dave?
I was gonna bring this up under the selectmen part, but I'm gonna say it now. So it's interesting what you hear. I don't know if anybody else heard this or not, probably not, but inadvertently, they mentioned that we had a $624,000 surplus last year to our town budget,
Really?
not school budget, town. So.
Yeah, it wasn't the school budget, let me
So-
tell you.
So that was an interesting
$300
tidbit, so I
surplus.
immediately after the meeting saw Susan and started suggesting ways we could spend it.
Oh, good.
Because she recommended initially that we just add it to our contingency
Rainy
fund.
day fund.
It was already at 19%, which is extremely healthy, and I didn't say anything else other, I just had a couple of suggestions, so this is, we go into the budget, I think we can kind of go in with
A little bit
a
different
little bit more of a
mindset.
gumption that says, hey, if we recommend a couple hundred, 300, 400,000, then it's really not gonna impact anything, because they can carry that over and add that in. Not saying for us, but it's general. So,
624, you said?
624,000, yeah.
Wow.
Got that.
That's nice
That
to
was
know.
just operating surplus
Surplus,
from
yeah.
last year.
And there was no budget increase. Well, the voters will have some fun with that.
Yeah.
Well,
Seriously.
the mill
Yeah,
rate
I'd love
didn't
to
go
see
up,
which
so.
That's right, and we had a surplus?
Accumulated then.
Yeah.
Not sure I'm following, but that's okay.
Anyway, some good news, I think, better than a
That's great.
deficit.
No,
Yes,
that's,
yes.
Yeah.
spending
Yep.
control. Yeah.
Yep. Any other comments?
I wanted to mention that Meg and I attended the CABE convention
Oh,
a few
yes.
weeks back, and it was fantastic. I mean, I think both of us
Yeah.
really enjoyed our experience there. We were both there for the 2 days.
Yeah.
And attended some great workshops. I hope more of us can make it next year. Just gave me a lot to think about. But I also wanted to mention, she's not here today, Olivia
Yeah,
spoke
Olivia.
on a student panel during the convention on the second day, and she was terrific. I think I got a couple of photos and forgot to send them out, but maybe I'll send them out to
I think
everybody.
Meg sent
I
one out.
sent one to
Meg
Philip
sent
right
one.
away, 'cause she
Good.
was standing up there talking.
She
Yeah,
did
it
a
was quite-
terrific job.
yeah, Quite nice to see her.
I had a question, in talking about CABE and professional development. I don't know what the budget is for that, but I understand that we're kind of cutting it a little close.
I keep, whenever you sign up for anything, I always go to Stephanie to let her know
Uh-huh.
what the expense is going to be and make sure that
Okay.
you're staying within the number.
Meg happened to mention that CABE offers some type of a program where you pay a flat fee and as many people can go to however many things.
I think you said, yeah.
It's
one-
called,
might
I
be
talked to
something-
Stephanie, I sent it to her, it's called Cave Express, it's $400 for a year, and you can attend everything except the convention in November and the legislative day on the Hill, which occurs in March. And if you go to any of those free, or prepaid
Covered things.
covered things, you have to pay for your meal, which is $15. So that would
Maybe
be a
something
savings
to
for us,
look
because
into.
I'm sure we're gonna see more people wanting to take advantage of the
Which I think is great.
professional
Yeah.
development,
I
which
encourage everybody
Yeah, their
to go to
events
as
are
many of
good.
that.
Yeah, you and I have gone to a
Possible.
Yeah,
couple
I've been to
things,
a number
yep,
of them.
yep.
They're really quite good.
Yep. So maybe that's something we could look into. I don't know how they, if that's like annual, like January to December, or, it would coincide with our fiscal year, but that may be something we'd be interested in doing.
That's a good idea.
For sure, yeah.
Yep.
And we're all going tomorrow, well, not we all, but Lauren and Laurel and I are going to the leadership and the new board member information conference, which lasts all day from 8 o'clock until 5 o'clock.
That's great.
So that's exciting.
Good. Any other comments? Lauren, you survived.
I did.
Your first
you,
meeting.
everyone.
All right, I don't think we have any executive session items to discuss. So.
You do.
Oh, we do?
Yeah,
Okay.
just
Is there a motion then?
I'll get my paper. I make a motion that we go into executive session, and the time is now 9:08.
Is there a second?
Second.
Okay, all in favor? Hi, everybody.